Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Comics Lair. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott. Thank you for joining us for our discussion of favorite books that are new and recent for us. The Comics Lair is sponsored by Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. And I'd like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they enjoy about reading comics. Kelley, will you start?
Sure. My name is Kelley M. I am a horror artist and author. And what I enjoy about reading comics, like I've been reading comics probably since I was like 8. I just they're comforting to me. I like revisiting some of my favorite characters, and just seeing what they do and what new things happen and seeing different storylines, and fellow artist enjoys other people's art too. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Hey, I'm John L. French, retired crime scene investigator from Baltimore City Police Department, and I am a writer in various genres and have been for the last 30 years. I have been reading comics on and off since I was about 8 or 9. I took a break for a while, and then Batman: The Dark Knight drew me slowly toward that slippery slope where, you just have to visit your comic book shop every week. And what I like about them is that it's both a visual medium and a literary medium. Instead of imagining what these characters look like, you see it, you sort of see the action. It's very different from TV and movies, and it's also very different from regular literature. It's it's just fun to read and look at.
Thanks. Those of you who've been here before know that I've been reading comics since I was about 8 years old. And what drew me first to the very first comic I ever read was a picture of Jimmy Olsen as Elastic Lad with his head stuck through a hole in the sky into the Phantom Zone. And Mon-El and the Superman and the Phantom Zone villains were there, and then Superman was flying on the cover, and I thought, I have to read this story. And it's partly the art, it's partly the characters, because I've fallen in love with some of them over reading them for time, and I want to keep up with their adventures. And it's partly just the shift, the process of reading it from one panel to the next panel and tracking through it. And as Scott McCloud wrote, and I think it was Understanding Comics, your brain supplies what goes on between panel 1 and panel 2 and so forth through the book. And there's something about that process that I really enjoy. So let's talk about what makes a comic book a favorite. Do you read primarily for the story or for the art? John?
It's really a combination of the two. I'm more attracted to the story. Being a writer, I'm always attracted to the story and what's happening. But when that's said, bad art, and I know we all have our own ideas of what is good art and bad art and all that, but bad art can really ruin a comic for me to the point where I don't want to read it anymore. As an example, many years ago, when DC decided it needed a huntress who was not Batman's daughter because it didn't exist anymore, they actually did a huntress. I forget if it was a mini-series, or an ongoing series. But I, for one, did not appreciate the art, and it ruined the comic for me because I was too busy. It was so much. I can't try to read it, and I don't remember if I continued with the series or not. But the art ruined it. But generally, if it's a choice between really good writing or really good art, I would much rather have the really good writing and okay art.
Kelley?
I don't know. It's really hard for me because so I'm a villain fan. So one of the things that I look for is I will pick up any book that has my favorite villains in it. I don't care if the art's good or what. I will just consume it because I'm trash. But I will say that like I have grown, like ever since I read like Arkham Asylum, Serious House on Serious Earth, I've had a deep appreciation for like really abstract, creepy kinds of almost emotional art that's very expressive like that in comics. And so I think if it's used well, I enjoy that kind of art. I think sometimes I'm very I don't know. For me, like the story is really important, but I will be perfectly honest. I'm that person that does not always care about what the heroes are doing. I'm like, but where's my silly boy? You know, where's my
Yeah.
friends? And I want to know what they're doing. And as long as if the characters are kept in character, then I'm okay. Even if the story is, you know, completely off the wall, as long as the characters make sense and their behaviors make sense, I will be fine with it. The more interesting the art, the better for me too. I like seeing how people interpret stuff all over the place. So it's really hard for me to choose, honestly.
Yeah. Kelley, you mentioned like when the art gets weird and all that. That reminded me. I used to be a follower of Kabuki
Oh yeah.
comic
Yeah,
strip.
I liked that too. It was great.
The first graphic novel, the whole thing, when it was Kabuki against, she was a soldier in a yakuza, team, and I love the character, and I would read it, but then the art became very, very good. But it got to the point where it made it difficult to follow the story.
Yeah, I could see that. I had some of those issues sometimes in some of the different issues of Sandman. Sometimes there were some moments where I wasn't entirely, but I kind of, you know, for Sandman it kind of makes sense because it was like dream state type things and the surrealism. So like it depends on how it's serving the story. You know what I mean? Like if it makes sense in the context of the story.
Yeah,
there's a current book I'm reading that's doing that I'm enjoying a lot, but I'm going to save that for later. But yeah,
I got the feeling with Kabuki that David Mack, that David Mack fell in love with the art and sort of forgot.
Yeah, I mean that happens. I could kind of see that happening as like. Did you ever read the Spawn series? I was a big fan of Spawn for a while, and sometimes the art was like, it was gorgeous, but sometimes it was like taking up almost too much. It was almost too much compared to like, there's just sometimes that just happens, you know. And I can understand you're enjoying drawing the folds of Spawn's cloak, and you're having a really good time, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but there's also, you know, there's two parts to a comic. There's the visual and then there's the storytelling, and you have to do both, you know.
Yeah.
So
well, and for me, I can. Oh, go ahead, John.
Go ahead. All right. There's a current comic now called Tim Drake Robin, and it took me a couple issues to get used to that particular style of art. It was kind of to me, it was a little exaggerated. And it took me a while before I, basically got used to that art and could, better enjoy the storyline.
Well, for me, I can read a book if I'm liking the story a lot, if I don't love the art. If I really, really don't like the art, then the story has to be that much better for me to keep reading it. And as long as I'm okay with the story, even if I don't totally love it, if the art is gorgeous, I'll buy it for the art anyway. And there's one book I'd rather not name that I'm doing that with right now. I don't totally love the story, but the art is gorgeous and I want that art in my hands. So I buy the book anyway. But is there a writer or an artist whose name on a book makes it an auto buy for you? Kelley?
Oh God, there's a few. Gosh. Right now, like, I mean, obviously if like Neil Gaiman's on there, I'll auto buy it. Frank Miller, as weird as he is, I will auto buy most of his comics. I mean, even if it's out there, I know it's going to be amazing. Dave McKean, his art, if his art is there, I will probably pick it up. Jim Lee, I love Jim Lee's art style. It's so awesome, and just it's very like manga almost ish, but it's not quite. You know what I mean? And I love that style. There's just I don't know. It also just really to me depends on like what they're working on too. You know what I mean? But yeah, those are my Dave McKean. I'll buy anything. Like if his art's on a wall calendar, I'll buy it. Like I'm complete trash about his art. It's beautiful. So
I'm more character oriented. I tend not to notice. I mean, yeah, I see who the artist is, I see who the writer is, but if it's a Batman book, I'm likely to buy it regardless of who the artist or writer is. I tend not to. I tend toward looking at the at the character more than I do. There were some characters following Starman. James Robinson was almost an automatic buy until I read some more of his stuff, which kind of made. I mean, he's still good, but he's not an automatic buy. Same thing with Neil Gaiman. I have bought books just because Neil Gaiman was on there. Then again, I bought the Sandman before I knew who Neil Gaiman was.
Yeah, same. Me too.
I bought issue 1 of Gaiman's Sandman based on the cover.
Yeah, those Dave McKean covers are amazing, and I love them so much. I have a tarot deck that's nothing but his art style. That's DC Vertigo, and it's all just Dave McKean's art, and I love it. It's just gorgeous. Like I can't get enough of his artwork.
Yeah, and another book I bought just because of the art was The Question.
Oh yeah.
Denny O'Neil was the writer, but Dennis McGowan, was that it? Was the artist, and I mean the whole combination of art and story. I mean, if you want to look at a perfect combination, one of the examples is Their Question, and other people have done The Question, and they've done it well, but they've never really reached the heights that O'Neil and Dennis Cowan achieved. And one of these, I don't know if DC's ever done collections of that question, but if they haven't, they should.
They should, yeah.
Well, for me, I will pick up and consider anything that's written by Mark Waid. Robert Venditti made me a Hawkman fan, and the story and the art on that book I thought meshed perfectly. I like Teenie Howard's work, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Gail Simone.
Oh yeah, Gail Simone. I always forget her, but yeah, she's up there.
Yeah. Stephanie Williams and Stephanie Phillips, writers. I'll pick up theirs. And then Dan Mora's art I really like. And Travis Moore I really like. It's just Travis Moore's art is beautiful. It's like the people are gorgeous. And Bruno Redondo does that too on Nightwing. And so I'll always look at a book. There's not really an auto buy for me, but it's a look at this and think seriously about buying it if I see that.
Yeah.
Who was the one who did? I mean, I think of her as the Power Girl artist.
Oh yeah, I know who you mean, but I can't think of the name.
Yeah, she always. I mean, I don't necessarily buy a book because, she's the artist. But when I do buy it and she's the artist, I'm never disappointed.
Well, I'm just looking at the Google. It's not Amanda Connor, is it?
Yes, that's who it is.
Okay. So the Google comes in handy for once. So good.
Yes. If I, as Peter David said, as I digress, I was at a convention, Baltimore Comic Con, and Amanda Connor was going to be there, and several of us were in line. And this one guy, he is ecstatic because he's finally going to be able to get an Amanda Connor sketch. And she comes out, her hand in a cast.
Oh,
And she says, it's nothing serious, but I can still sign, but unfortunately I'm not doing any sketches. The look on this guy's face was like he'd come down Christmas morning and there was nothing under the tree.
Oh,
Felt bad for him. Hopefully he got his sketch later.
that's too bad.
yeah. I mean, I will say, like at the latest Atlanta Comic Con, I stood in line and waited to get a sketch from James Zobar, who I've wanted to get a sketch from for a while, and I am very glad that I did. But I could not talk. I was like weepy and freaking out, and I never get like that around celebrities, but I will get around like that around celebrity artists. I'm like, oh, go, nah,
Yeah.
So
I felt a little bit like that. Felt a little bit like that at the Baltimore Comic Con when I got Mike Kaluta to do me a shadow sketch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just like it's worth it, but it's like yeah, that's just the fan experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's actually dive into what books we consider to be our favorites. And we'll just do several rounds of that until we run out of things to talk about. So what's a book that's come out within the last year or so that's, or that you've been reading for the last year or so, that you really like enough that you would keep following it? Definitely. It's on your favorites list. John?
Okay. I have my favorites, and then I have what I regard as trade paperback shelf-worthy book. And the current one that I'm reading on that is the White Knight series. That is one of the best takes, best recent takes on Batman. It's completely different, but Murphy really understands the whole Batman thing. He understands who Batman is, who Batman wants to be, and all the surrounding characters, and he does something completely different with them while keeping within the spirit of Batman. And I hope they never put him on a regular Batman book, because I will be totally disappointed. I just hope he keeps doing the Murphyverse for as long as he can, and he's doing a little series now featuring the holographic Joker with his daughters, and but after that it's White Knight Justice.
Kelley?
I have a feeling we're both going to be suggesting Batman things, because that's what I'm currently reading right now is Batman. So I'm a big fan of the Riddler, and I've been reading Riddler Year One, and it is amazing. It's written by Paul Dano, who played the Riddler in the Batman movie, with the recent one that came out, and he's writing it's basically the prequel for his character, how he got to that point. The art is by Steven Subak. I can't remember how to pronounce it, but it is it's very expressive. And there are a lot of little details on Edward Nash's OCD, his mental states. The color palette changes, and the way people are drawn changes depending on how his mental state is. And it's really expressive and almost surreal at times, and very cool. And it's being published bi-monthly, so it's every 2 months. And there's only going to be 6 in the series, and I think we just had number 4 come out, so it's almost done. But it's awesome, and I hope they get Paul Dano to write more comics, because he really understands how the Riddler's mind works very well, and it's one of the best takes I've read on that character, and I love that character. So thoroughly enjoyed it. I wish they'd taken notes from that for Year Zero when they did that. So
my current favorite book is World's Finest. So that's a Batman book too.
Oh, right. It's also a Superman book, but that's very good.
Mark Waid and Dan Mora. And I really like the way the interplay between the characters is done. And you can tell both Bruce and Clark come across as mentors to Dick Grayson. And you can tell that Dick is not Nightwing younger. He is still finding his way, but he's still very, very good. And so I really like the fact that Mark Waid was able to strike that balance and not just write Nightwing and World's Finest but Younger. And then the art by Dan Mora is just gorgeous. There was a scene in an underground cavern that was with demons that was really, really well done early on, and it was kind of spooky. And I love the way he has adapted the Robin costume. So the short pants are gone, but he kept the pixie boots, as Gail Simone's Barbara calls them, the pixie boots. And he did the Doom Patrol as guest stars, and they were really well done. And their faces are very expressive. The body posture is really good. I mean, we were talking about layouts earlier, and there was a period when I stopped reading X-Men because I couldn't follow the panel sequences. The layout had gotten so creative that it was work. For me, other people obviously didn't have that problem, but I don't feel like reading a comic book should be work. I read comic books to relax and have some escapism and see the good guys win. And so I really like the way the art flows in that book. And it's always crisp and clean and expressive. And so that's my current favorite book. Does anybody want to add anything to anything that we've talked about?
I'd like to add a couple, if I may. One, keeping with the Batman theme, is Nightwing. I mean, I was an on and off reader of Nightwing. I have the whole run of Grayson, which is sort of Nightwing, but isn't. But ever since Dick Grayson recovered from getting shot in the head and became Nightwing again, stopped being Rick Grayson or whatever he called himself, and started being Nightwing again, it has been, I mean, it's everything I want in a comic. The art is great. There was one scene, it was like a splash page, but Nightwing is chasing somebody, and it's kind of like you see his progression. You know, it's like a bunch of mini panels on this big page. Each little section is him chasing, and it is as close to an animation you can get in a two dimension comic book. But it's just been Nightwing is the hero all the other heroes want to be, you know, and Upwing is just great. The other book,
excuse me, John, are you talking about the book where you can lay it flat and it's one long stream of artwork?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other one is the current run of the Flash. I mean, it basically, again, it embodies what a hero should be. I love the idea that Wally West is one of the few married heroes. And they're basically a family of superheroes. You know, his kids are superheroes. His wife, at least temporarily, is a superhero. And it ties into the whole concept of the Flash family. And getting into the 1 minute war, it was a little hard getting into the 1 minute war, but the payoff at the end was great. And I think it's the final panel between Max Mercury and Impulse is just great. Getting back to art versus writing, one of the best books for art in the Batman thing was Batman Reptilian. The art, it was a fairly disturbing book they did with Croc, but the artwork is just so good, and you almost didn't need the dialogue. I mean, that's how good the art was.
Kelley, did you want to add anything?
Yes, it came out like back in 2019, but Harleen is really good if no one's read that. It's basically retelling the Joker and Harley meet up where she becomes Harley Quinn, and honestly, it's one of my favorite portrayals of that relationship. And I'm not a huge Harley fan because I feel like she's kind of overplayed. And been very diluted. But so is the Joker. He's been very diluted. He's my special boy. Yeah, I really liked that book a lot. It had beautiful art, very expressive, digital, but almost like with a watercolor and illustration feel to it, and it's very pretty. Current one that I'm reading right now that I'm also enjoying is Batman and the Joker, The Deadly Duo. That one's a lot of fun.
That's very good. Yeah.
It's very fun. It is sometimes hilariously over the top, but there are moments where I just laugh out loud. And there's a great moment where Batman and Joker have to remove X number of people on a train to get to a certain. Well, they have to remove things on the train to get to a certain weight limit, and Batman's trying to figure out how to do that, and Joker just shoves a bunch of people off the train, and it works. And and honestly, their Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck almost dynamic but serious is like the best thing, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It could never be canon in the comics, but it is making me happy, and I enjoy that.
Now there's a comic I want to see. Bugs Bunny as Batman and Joker and Daffy Duck as the Joker.
I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to recommend a comic it's now out in collected edition. It had 36 issues, and it was always planned to have 36 issues. And it sort of surprises me that I like it because I'm not a horror fan. I don't like being scared, and I don't like brutal violence. But it's a retelling of the Arthurian legend in contemporary times. And different people are characters from the legends, and they're all swept into the story, and they're going across England trying to undo the ascension of this resurrected King Arthur, who's kind of a monster. And then they pull Beowulf into it. I mean, he's not a monster in that he's big and hideous and deformed. He's just kind of skeletal and he looks creepy. But it's written by Kieran Gillen and art by Dan Mora, and it's a beautiful book. And I think it's hard to do a fresh Arthurian anymore. And this one definitely qualified. And it's out in trade paper, or it might be even be in a hardback collected edition now. But it wrapped up late last year, I think it was. And it was really, really good. And then at the other end of the spectrum is Chivalry by Colleen Doran and Neil Gaiman. Yeah.
What's the book called?
Once and Future, which is what drew my attention to it on the rack, because the Once and Future King, but they did Arthur, and then they pulled in Beowulf, and I thought, well, is this going to be, are we going to run through the different English legends or British legends? And the answer was no. They had an ending that was very satisfying, and it wrapped things up. But there was just this least little hint that maybe someday they would come back to this world. So I'm really hoping that they will.
Yeah. And if I may add it's Image, but it's really an indie, is Lady Mechanica.
Yeah. What's that about?
It's all right. It's steampunk, which, kind of and it's been around for years and years, but the, Joe Benitez only does like 4 issues. It does 4-issue story arcs, and at best he does 2 a year, 2 arcs a year. It's set in Victorian times. Lady Mechanica is a woman who has mechanical arms and legs, does not know where they came from. She basically has a memory lapse about that, and she works as a detective of sort. The art's very good. The storylines are compelling. The last one ended on a cliffhanger of sorts. but if the Kickstarter announcement is to be believed, he's working on the next story arc.
Yeah, I guess I should add that Once and Future was from Boom Studios. John, when you said that reminded me to add that. And another one I liked that's now out in trade paperback for the whole series was a mini series written by Stephanie Phillips called Artemis and the Assassin. And there's this agency that can travel through time and affect watershed events. And the operative is assigned to kill Virginia Hall, who was one of the OSS's most, not the OSS, Special Operations Executives, most successful spies in World War II, working in occupied France. And things don't quite go according to plan, but a lot of it's actually drawn from history and Virginia Hall's story. And I really loved it. And so if you're at all interested in World War II and history and pivotal moments in time, it's a really good one to look at. Kelley, did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, there's two. I think one good one to read if you're a Ninja Turtles fan like I am, you should check out the TMNT, the IDW collection. It's got some really beautiful Ninja Turtles artwork to it, and just the artwork's gorgeous, the storyline's great, and the turtles look really, really good. And it's probably going to be like, if it isn't a classic, it's a classic now. There's some beautiful versions of it in lovely hardcover that collect it, and it's quite lovely. The other one is it's one by if you've read Diana, Princess of the Amazons, which was kind of geared toward younger audiences. This one's for slightly older. It's still by Victoria Ying. I think this one is indie published. I can't remember, but it's called Hungry Ghost, and it's dealing with the idea of addiction and disordered eating and that kind of mental illness and things like that. It's really interesting. I think that one just came out last year, at the end of last year, or just this year. But it's really worth checking out. Slightly triggering if you do have eating disorder issues, but definitely a worthwhile and compelling read. It's probably going to be up there on one of the recommended lists by the end of the year. So,
one more thing, if you really like creepy and weird bunny mask, I forget who publishes it, but it's about this spirit who appears in the form of a young girl who's wearing a bunny mask, and she's sort of an instrument of vengeance, and she can be kind of brutal. But I picked up the Free Comic Book Day issue last year and went out and got the first paperback and the next series. If you like it weird and creepy, Bunny Mask is the one for you.
I think it's Aftershock, John. I looked it up while you were talking. That's also who publishes Artemis and the Assassin. Anything else, Kelley?
I can't really think of anything right now,
Yeah.
except like Lore Olympus and things like that like people kind of know about that, but it's still really, the artwork's beautiful, and it's a really good retelling of the Persephone and Hades Greek myths. It's very nice.
Okay.
Just let me not mind. I'm not a Marvel reader, but I'm really enjoying the current run of Moon Knight.
I'm behind on Daredevil. I'm about 6 months behind on reading Daredevil, but up until I started falling behind, I liked it a lot. It's Chip Zdarsky writing and Marco, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Cicchetto's artwork, which is just beautiful and very detailed. And Cicchetto makes great use of shadows and lines. Like there's a scene where Matt is sort of feeling like he's trapped. He's lying on his bed, and the lights from the city are casting the shadows of the window pane frames. So he looks kind of like he's in a cage, even though he's in his apartment and in bed. And I liked that a lot. And I really enjoyed Excalibur until it came to an end. I haven't decided whether I like Knights of X quite so much, but Excalibur's probably out in trade now, and I think it's definitely worth looking at, because that too is a different spin on the Arthurian legend, mixing in superheroes and magic, and I really enjoyed it. So is there anything that anybody wants to talk about that we haven't already touched on before we wrap up?
We're talking about our favorite books and all that, but there's like favorite characters. Like I will always read Batman and Superman. It's just that of late, I mean, the whole action comics where Batman went to War World, just kind of, what was the point? And the writing just didn't come up to it. And I was really enjoying, Superman, Son of Kal, with Jonathan Kent as Superman, watching him grow into a major hero. And then they sort of merged that into the whole Superman Returns, and now he's off in other dimensions. And likewise with Batman and Detective. I mean, I still like the character, but ever since the Joker War, where, they basically took all of Batman's money away and he had to scramble, it just, if it really was what it was, if it was a character who wasn't Batman, I probably wouldn't be reading it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you want to say anything along those lines, Kelley?
I have favorite characters, and I pick up books for them. I'll pick up books for Scarecrow. I'll pick up books for the Joker. I'll pick up books for the Riddler. I'll pick up books for Poison Ivy. I'll pick up Catwoman books. I like Batman, but I get tired of. I think I've just kind of gotten tired of sort of the just the way that it's like there's always this tons of rocks. I kind of stopped reading like main like storyline Batman comics for a while after what was it? The earthquake that destroyed everything for a while, way back.
No Man's
Land.
Yeah. I kind of was like, guys, it's kind of dumb. And I kind of got tired of that, and it just felt like it was going to take forever. And then I kind of dropped out. And then I came back in and have stuck around. And I'm kind of a back and forth person right now. But if one of my fave characters isn't there, I'm probably not going to pick it up, just because I don't trust them to not just, I don't know, keep throwing rocks at Batman. I'm there because I want to watch Batman deal with his rogues gallery, and I feel like they keep throwing rocks at him, and I'm like, that's great,
Yeah.
but I want to see Batman solve crimes.
He should be the detective.
Yeah, I don't want to watch him like trying to, the police department in Gotham should always be corrupt because it's Gotham City. That's why Batman's justified. I don't know. I've become a jaded old fan.
Two of my favorite characters are Nightwing and Oracle.
Oh yeah, I love.
Oh yes, Barbara Gordon is one of the best characters DC has,
but she's been misused and abused like crazy, and I hate that for her.
But I will buy the book. I'm reading Nightwing, and there's a lot I enjoy about it. I don't love it as much as John does, but I'm with John, and thank goodness Rick Grayson is over. I'd read Nightwing since the beginning, and I stopped reading it as soon as it became apparent, which was about issue 52 or 53, that Rick Grayson was going to be with us for a while. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
But I really like Dick and Barbara, and I like the way they function in that book. I also liked Dick and Barbara, the dynamic when she was 8 years older than he was, which when he was a young teenager, that's squicky. But once he grew up, then that was okay. And that was where Gail Simone and Chuck Dixon used the period they used for the relationship.
Yeah. I really hope that DC keeps Dick and Barbara together. One thing I really don't like about, I don't know if it's the same in the Marvel world, but is that these heroes aren't allowed to have stable relationships.
There's the Fantastic Four, because Reed and Sue, but they're an exception.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we used to have Hawkman and the improperly named Hawk Girl. But they were a married couple for a long time, and they seem to do all right. That's what I like about the Flash, because they actually are allowed to have relationships. One of the worst things that DC did was in its first Batwoman run is break up Kate and Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
In a really dumb way of doing it. But speaking of which, that Batwoman, the first Batwoman comic had great.
Well, then
the use of
Sue Gibney were married, and then they killed Sue horribly, and that was the end of that. And
yeah, and we really haven't seen the Elongated Man since they did away with the New 52.
Yeah.
Well,
we are actually coming up on time. So is there anything that you all would like to add before we close?
No, that's about it.
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, then if you will each tell people where they can find information about you and your work, and if there's anything recent or upcoming that you would like to mention, this is the time to do that. Kelley?
My name is Kelley M. Frank. I am a horror artist and author, and I have a whole bunch of shows and public appearances that are coming up this year, and you can find that on my appearances page at morbidsmile.com.
John?
Hey, again, I'm John L. French. My most recently published book was Grease Monkeys. It is an anthology of diesel punk stories. I edited it with, Danielle Ackley McPhail edited mostly with my assistant. She's the main editor, and I provided support. But I said it's an anthology of diesel punk stories. My first foray into diesel punk. Upcoming from Pad Wolf Books is Detectives of the Abyss, that in a strange world, and it features Sherlock Holmes and his goddaughter, Dr. Jane Watson. And the main storyline is the affair at Dracula's castle, where Jane has to go and solve several crimes, including a couple murders. And coming up from Bold Venture Press is The Wages of Sin. That's SYN, Jericho Sin, as sort of a operative for hire in Harbor City.
Well, you can find my website at nancynorthcott.com. There's information about books and social media. The main area of social media I use is Twitter, and I'm there more than is probably good for me, and I'm at Nancy Northcott on Twitter. My next release is the third book in my historical fantasy Boar King's Honor trilogy from Falstaff Books, and it will be out by the first weekend in May. I don't have the exact date yet. It's set in World War II, the Battle of Britain, the summer of 1940, which is a period I really love. And then there will be, in May, the next release in my Like Mage Wars Paranormal Romances. It'll be a novella called Magic and Murder. And that's about it for me. I'd like to thank our panelists, Kelley and John, and thank all of you for watching. And thanks to our sponsors, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. And you can find more information about them at heroesonline.com.